Imagine a world where sending a message online could cost you more than a fancy dinner. No memes, no Google, no "seen at 2:14 p.m." Just a blinking screen, a screaming dial-up tone, and a bill that made your parents question every life decision they ever made. Now, here's the strange part. Before the internet we know today, before websites, before social media, before everything, there were other internets, and one of them almost took over the world. But instead, it failed. Miserably. And the reason it failed might actually explain why the internet you're using right now even exists. If you love uncovering the forgotten stories of the past, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment on what era you want us to explore next. Let's rewind. Back to the late 1970s and early 1980s, a time when computers were bulky, mysterious machines that looked like they belonged more in a spaceship than your living room. But something big was happening behind the scenes. Governments, universities, and corporations were quietly building networks that could connect computers together. The most famous of these early systems was ARPANET, a U.S. military-backed project that laid the foundation for what we now call the Internet. But ARPANET wasn't for regular people. You couldn't just log in and check messages or watch cat videos. It was exclusive, technical, almost secret, which created a massive opportunity. Because while scientists were busy connecting research labs, companies started asking a very different question. What if we could sell this to everyone?
And that's where things get interesting. Because the first internet for the public didn't look like the internet at all. It looked more like a digital prison. Enter one of the earliest giants of online services, CompuServe. Launched in 1969, but booming in the 1980s, CompuServe allowed users to connect to a central system using their home computers. Once connected, you could send emails, read news, join forums, and even shop. Sounds familiar, right? That's because it was basically trying to be the internet before the internet. But there was a catch. Actually, many catches. First, everything was closed off. You weren't browsing the web, you were trapped inside CompuServe's ecosystem. Think of it like a giant mall where you could only visit the stores the mall owner allowed. No Google, no outside websites, no freedom. It was less World Wide Web and more World Wide Cage. Second, it was expensive. And not just subscription expensive, we're talking pay-by-the-minute expensive. Users were charged hourly rates just to stay connected, so every second online felt like a ticking bomb. You didn't casually explore, you rushed. Reply fast, read fast, log off faster. Because staying online too long could turn your bank account into a 404 error.
Now, despite all this, CompuServe actually became incredibly popular. Why? Because it was one of the only options. And for the first time in history, people could communicate digitally across long distances. It felt revolutionary until competition showed up. In the 1980s and early 90s, more services entered the scene. Names like Prodigy and AOL began building their own versions of this pre-internet internet. Each one promised a better experience, more features, better design, more content. But here's the twist. They all made the same fundamental mistake. They built closed networks. Each service was its own separate universe. If you were on CompuServe, you couldn't easily interact with someone on AOL. If you were on Prodigy, you were stuck in Prodigy's world. It was like having multiple internets that refused to talk to each other. Imagine if today, Instagram couldn't interact with Twitter, Gmail couldn't send messages to Outlook, and Google only worked for certain users. Yeah, chaos.
And yet, that's exactly how things worked back then. Fragmented, isolated, limited. But people didn't know any better because they hadn't seen what was coming next. Now here's where things start to fall apart. Because while these companies were busy building their digital kingdoms,
something much bigger and much more powerful was quietly growing in the background. Remember ARPANET? Well, it didn't just disappear. It evolved and eventually became part of something called the Internet Protocol System, a set of rules that allowed different networks to communicate with each other. This was the key difference. While companies like CompuServe and AOL were building walls, the real Internet was building bridges. And then came the moment that changed everything. In 1989, a British scientist named Tim Berners-Lee proposed a system that would make information accessible across different computers. That system became the World Wide Web. And unlike CompuServe or AOL, it was open. Anyone could build on it. Anyone could access it. Anyone could create a website. No gatekeepers. No digital landlords charging rent per minute. Just connection. At first, the big companies didn't take it seriously. Why would they? They were already making money. Users were paying hourly fees. Business was booming. From their perspective, everything was working perfectly. But here's the problem with comfort. It makes you blind. While they were optimizing profits, the open internet was optimizing growth. And growth always wins. Developers started building websites. Universities connected their networks. Individuals created content. And suddenly, the internet wasn't just a service anymore. It was a movement. Meanwhile, the older systems started to show cracks. Users began noticing the limitations. Why can't I access this information? Why am I paying so much? Why can't I connect with everyone? And slowly, curiosity turned into frustration. Frustration turned into migration. And migration? Well, that turned into the beginning of the end. But here's the ironic part. The very companies that tried to control the internet ended up being forced to join it. AOL eventually opened access to the web. CompuServe tried to adapt, but by then, it was already too late. Because once people tasted freedom online, there was no going back to a walled garden, no matter how polished it looked, no matter how comfortable it felt. And just like that, the internet before the internet began to collapse. Not because it didn't work, but because it didn't evolve. And in the world of technology, standing still is just another way of falling behind. But if that's the case, then what exactly killed these early networks? Was it just the open web? Or were there deeper problems hidden beneath the surface? Because the truth is, some of these companies didn't just fail. They failed in ways that were completely avoidable. And honestly, a little embarrassing. And that's where things get even more interesting. So what really killed the internet before the internet? Because it wasn't just bad luck. And it definitely wasn't a lack of users. In fact, at one point, services like AOL had millions of subscribers. People loved it. People depended on it. People even had their entire digital lives inside it. So how do you go from that to becoming almost irrelevant? Well, the answer comes down to a few critical mistakes. And the first one was trying to control something that was never meant to be controlled. You see, platforms like CompuServe, Prodigy, and AOL all operated on the same idea. If we build the entire experience, we can own the entire experience. Sounds smart, right? Until you realize they weren't building the internet. They were building islands. And islands have limits. The open internet, on the other hand, that was an entire ocean. Because of protocols like TCP/IP developed through projects tied to ARPANET, different networks could connect, expand, and evolve together. No single company owned it, no single company controlled it, and that made it unstoppable. Meanwhile, the closed systems were stuck playing defense. Every new feature had to be approved. Every piece of content had to fit inside their system. Every innovation had to go through a gate. And in tech, gatekeeping is just a slower way of saying, we're about to get replaced. Now let's talk about the second mistake. And honestly, this one hit users where it hurts the most. Their wallets. Remember those hourly charges? Yeah, those didn't age well. While services like CompuServe were charging users by the minute, the open internet was becoming cheaper, and eventually flat-rate pricing started to emerge. Pay once, stay online as long as you want. No pressure, no panic, no log off before your bank account cries. It was like going from paying for every breath you take to finally being able to breathe freely. In the form of web browsers like Mosaic. Mosaic made it easier for everyday people to navigate the web. You didn't need to be a tech expert. You didn't need special access. You just needed curiosity.
And curiosity spread fast. Soon, more browsers followed. More websites appeared. More users joined. And the internet became something no single company could compete with. Now here's where things get almost ironic, because some of the very companies that tried to replace the internet ended up becoming that iconic "you've got mail" and instantly feel like you were part of something futuristic. But behind there was no going back. Now let's be clear, not everything about these early systems was bad. In fact, they introduced concepts we still use today. Email, online communities, digital commerce, chat rooms. These weren't invented by the modern internet. They were refined by it. So, in a strange way, these failed networks weren't just failures. They were prototypes, like early drafts of something much bigger, something more powerful, something they couldn't fully understand at the time. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. Because it's not just about technology, it's about mindset. The companies that failed, they tried to own the future. The system that succeeded, it allowed everyone to build the future. And that difference changed everything. Today, we take the internet for granted. Streaming, messaging, browsing, creating, it all feels normal. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time when going online meant entering a controlled space, paying for every second, and staying within invisible walls. A time when the internet wasn't open, wasn't free, and definitely wasn't guaranteed to succeed. But it did. Not because it was perfect, but because it was open to becoming better. And maybe that's the real lesson here. The things that stand a test of time aren't always the ones that start the strongest. They're the ones that adapt, evolve, and let go of control. Because in the end, the internet before the internet didn't fail because people didn't want it. It failed because it refused to become what people actually needed. And the moment something better came along, well, history didn't just move forward. It logged off and never came back. If you love uncovering the forgotten stories of the past, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment on what era you want us to explore next.